May feels like it lasted so long. Like the books at the beginning of this month, I'm not entirely sure I'm still going to have coherent thoughts on them. Hi everyone, my name's Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for being here today. Today's video is going to be my May reading wrap up. May's felt like a strange month. It's felt like it's lasted absolutely ages, but also like gone past in a blink of an eye. And I'm just like, I have no concept of what time is anymore. Like I've just sat down to start filming this and I'm like, it feels like I haven't done like a sit down video like this in so long, and I don't know why. I think it's just because I've probably like done like TBR Mash and Marvel recommendations and things, and I've not just done like a sitting in front of my shelves and having a chat sort of video. But it feels weird, so sorry if I'm a bit strange at the beginning of this video. Hopefully I'll get better as it goes along. First, let's start with some statistics of what I read during the month of May. I read a total of 13 books, which is equal for the most amount of books that I've read in one month during the year, the other month being the month before, April. So I'm doing well. Reading is definitely sort of better than it has been. I mentioned, I think in last month's wrap up, that I didn't hit like a major slump, but during the middle of the month at the beginning of the year, I would sort of just hit that wall in the middle of the month and then have to pull it back by the end. Whereas this month, I actually felt like I was doing well with my reading throughout the entire thing. Like there wasn't any time where I was sort of like not feeling like I was picking things up, which is good because, you know, I want to read. It's one of my favourite things to do. So I'm very happy that I sort of got back onto my reading kick. Also, especially because there are readathons happening this month. I am a team captain for Marvelathon. I'm captain of Team Scarlet Witch, and I want to get all the points. And I'm also doing Whateverathon as well, sort of doing that one as like a secondary thing and just matching things up to prompts as and when I've read them. But I would also like to get a lot of points for Team Shelf Slayers as well. You'd have no idea how many times I just had to film that clip with the name of the team because I have an issue with saying S's sometimes, so Team Shelf Slayers is difficult for me to say quickly. Why did I pick that team? Anyway, let's get on to the actual statistics of breakdown of pages and things like that. So like I said, I read 13 books, which was a total of 4,624 pages, and that breaks down as 149 pages per day. As mentioned many times before, I aim to read 100 pages per day. And so far this year, I'm doing really, really well with that. Actually, for the year, I am now at 151 pages per day on average. I'm actually at a total of 54 books for the year now. Now, my Goodreads goal every single year is to read 52 books, because basically up until like the last 2 years, I was reading somewhere between 50 and 70 books per year. And I would always set my reading goal at a book a week to make it sort of achievable for me, and I've still kept that even though my reading has increased over the last couple of years, because obviously when my reading first increased, it was 2020, like there was a lot of like the world was a different place, so I didn't know whether that would continue once sort of things started to get back to normal, and it seems like it is. But I don't want to jinx it, so I'm still keeping my reading goal at 52. That means that I have hit my Goodreads goal for the year. Go me. But I am obviously actually aiming to kind of get to what I got last year, which was 120 something. That is the actual goal, but I'm happy that I have managed to at least hit that one book a week already, and we're not even halfway through the year yet. For the formats of books that I read 2 ebooks, 1 audiobook, 5 that were a mixture of, it really was a variety this month of whether it was ebook, audiobook, physical, whatever, and then I read 5 that were completely physical reads, and so a nice mixture this month definitely. And then for age range, I read 4 YA books and 9 adult books. I did read quite a lot of romances this month, and romances, I tend to read adult romances, so that definitely is what all the adult books are on there, but it is still going very up and down between whether I'm YA or adult every month, leaning more and more towards adult. And then for star ratings, I had 0 1 star, 0 2 star, 1 3 star, 8 4 stars and 4 5 stars. So my 4 and 5 stars swapped around from last month, because last month it was 4 4 stars and 8 5 stars. So not as many like new all-time favourites and things. Actually, to be honest, last month I just reread all of Heartstopper, so that meant that a lot of 5 stars there. So the new books that I'm reading, I found some that I really loved, some not so much, but in general it's a good average, an average of 4.23 for the month. Right, I think that's all the statistics you need to know. Let's just talk about the individual books and what my thoughts were on them. So I started off the month pretty strong actually. I read I read a book in its entirety on the 1st of May, and that was The On Honeymooners by Christina Lauren. The 1st of May was a Sunday, I believe, and I think Becca had sprints on and she was also reading this book. It wasn't planned, we were just sort of both reading it at the same time, and it was just one of those that once I started reading it I couldn't really put it down. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It wasn't quite, there were some things about it that irritated me a little bit, so I couldn't quite give it a 5-star. Basically, it's about these 2 characters who end up having to go on what should be a honeymoon trip for a bride and groom after everyone at the wedding, apart from them, comes down with a stomach illness. So the problem is that these 2 characters don't actually get on. So it is an enemies to lovers type story. I really enjoyed this book. I loved the banter and I loved the romance and the way it developed. My only issue with it was that kind of 3rd act struggle that they always have to go through. I just kind of wanted to hit the male character's head against a wall at one point. And it wasn't like one of those moments where it's like, oh, you just have, you know, they have to go through this struggle because it creates drama in a book. It was actually like, no, I'm really like irritated with the male character. Please, can we just get this part over with? That's the only reason why it got knocked down from a 5 to a 4. I was very much on the borderline, but I did really enjoy this. I love Christine Lauren's writing, and I've actually just hauled some more of their books. So I'm going to be reading more of them in the future, and I hope I like them as much as I liked this one. Next up, I read The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This is Beth O'Leary's newest book. I've read all of her books so far. This one I can't say too much about without really giving it away, but what I will tell you is basically at the start of this book there are 3 characters who all have a date on Valentine's Day with the same man, and they are all stood up by him, and then it kind of goes from there. But like I said, I really can't give too much away about this because it will spoil it, but I did enjoy it. I again gave this one 4 stars. My issue with this was that when it did all sort of come together, it was just a little bit too late on in the book for me, and it kind of made you rethink a lot of stuff that you'd thought earlier on in the book. But then that made it hard for me to kind of get behind what was happening in the ending, because I spent so long of the book kind of thinking things were going one way and then something changed, and I didn't have enough time to kind of get on board with what the ending actually was. I think on a reread I might prefer it because obviously I know what's coming, so I can kind of be prepared for it and kind of see it coming rather than sort of be like, oh, okay, now I'm suddenly supposed to think this instead. But I did really enjoy it. I really enjoy Beth O'Leary's writing style. Like I said, I've read all of her books so far, and I think I've given them all either a 4 or 5 stars. So I will inevitably read whatever she writes next, and I'm glad that I picked up this one. Next up, I have one that I don't actually have to hold because I have unhauled it. That makes it sound like I really hated this book. I promise I didn't, because when I show you what book it is, a lot of people are going to say how much they love this book, and I unfortunately didn't. It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. So I gave this one 3 stars. It wasn't a bad book by any means. I can understand why people loved it. There are things that I loved about it. It's inspired by Schitt's Creek, which is one of my favourite TV programmes. You can't see, but I'm literally sat next to my TV, and there was an episode of Schitt's Creek paused because I was rewatching it before I started filming this video. And in general, I liked the concept and all of that. It was just some of the execution. I'm not a fan of Tessa Bailey's writing style. I've read one other book by her before. I read Fix Her Up, and I dislike the writing style in that. And I can't even really explain what it is in particular that I dislike, but as soon as I started reading it, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember why I didn't like this. So although I can't explain it, it's just something about the writing style that I just don't gel with. So I gave it 3 stars. Like I said, a very middle of the road type thing. It wasn't a bad book by any means. It's just not a book for me. That is the reason why I don't actually have it to hold up right now. Because like I said, I know it's not a book for me. I bought it and read it this month, and I'm never going to read it again. But I knew other people who did want to read it, and Gemma just mentioned that she wanted to read it, so I've sent it her way instead. So it's gone to someone who hopefully will enjoy it. Unfortunately, it's just not a book for me. I won't be reading the sequel. Please talk me out of it if I do think about reading it, because during this month ever so often I've gone, should I read the second one? No, I shouldn't. Why would I do that when I know I probably won't enjoy it? Anyway, on to the next book, one that I did actually enjoy. This is another 4-star read, and it is The Roommate by Rosie Dannon. This one was not what I expected, because on the synopsis it tells you that the main character, Clara, ends up going to live with her best friend from childhood, who she secretly had a thing for many years. And she's hoping that this summer is going to be the year that they get together. And then she gets there and he decides to go on tour with his band, and he ends up subletting his room in the apartment. So she ends up living with this other guy called Josh. Now on the back of here it says there's a good chance he and Clara could have survived sharing a summer sublet if she hadn't looked him up on the internet. Once she learns how Josh has made a name for himself, Clara realises living with him might destroy the reputation she spent years building. And then it goes on to say, but while they may not agree on much, both Josh and Clara believe women deserve deserve better sex, and what they decide to do about it will change both of their lives, and if they're lucky, they'll help everyone else get lucky too. Now that's very vague, and I didn't realise sort of what the specifics were, like when it obviously hints of her sort of finding out how he's made a name for himself and this endeavour that they decide to launch together. And I'm not going to talk about what it is here because, again, I don't want to go too much in spoilers. But yeah, what the actual sort of storyline was ended up being different than what I expected it to be, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the romance. There is some steaminess in here as well. It was a fun, quick read, and yeah, gave it 4 stars. I will be reading the second one in this series. I did plan on reading it this month, I just didn't get around to it. It follows one of the characters, one of the business partners from this book, and I liked that character in here, so I'm excited to see their storyline in the next one, which is called The Intimacy Experiment, which I will be trying to read as soon as possible. Next up, we have another one that I don't have to hold because I got this one as an ebook. It is Frostblood by Ellie Blake. This one I read because it came up on my TBR game. It was one that Becca Fowle had recommended for me to read. I enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It's not a new all-time favourite. I probably will carry on with the series though. It's basically about a world where there are people called Frostbloods and there are people called Firebloods, and the Frostbloods are in control and Firebloods are sort of outlawed, and the main character is Fireblood, and it is about the inevitable sort of forbidden romance, power struggle, that type of YA fantasy stuff that we know and love from years gone by. This is my reason why I said it's not a new favourite, is that it is very much a YA fantasy of its time. It have reminded me of lots of other YA fantasies I've read in years gone by, and that's not its fault at all, because if I'd have read it when it came out, I probably would have loved it. It's just I've read so many other things that are a similar type of vibe that it was reminding me too much of other stuff. One of the main parallels I kept making was sort of like Leigh Bardugo vibes. It was reminding me of some stuff in Shadow and Bone, but then also I've seen like people say there's some Hunger Games elements in there as well, and there are, and there's probably countless others as well. But like I said, it's just that I've read it sort of after I've read all of those. I enjoyed it for what it was, and I enjoyed it enough that I will pick up the sequel. I'm not quite sure when yet, but I will carry on with the series at some point. I think there's 3 of them in the series. I can't remember, but hopefully 3. Probably 3. A lot of fantasies at that time tended to be trilogies. Trilogies were all the thing then, and then it went to duologies for a while, didn't it? But yeah, I think it was a trilogy. Anyway, on to the next book. The next book that I read was my Robin Hobb book of the month. It was Dragonhaven. This is the 2nd book in the Rainbow Chronicles. It is, what book is it overall? It's number 11. Is it 11? 3 in the first series, 3 in the second series, 3 in the third. This is a 4th series. So yeah, book 11 in the Realm of the Elderlings. I liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. I love Robin Hobb. I love Robin Hobb's writing. Once again, I can tell you absolutely nothing about this book without spoiling it, so I'm not going to go too much into it. But basically, there are pacing issues with this series because it was published not in the way that Robin Hobb wanted it to be. I preferred this one to the first one, definitely. There was definitely more that happened in it, and it felt like it had a better ending than the first one did, because the first one kind of just ended almost as if it was halfway through a book. This one definitely ended better, but the pacing throughout the book was still off, and also I just don't love these characters as much as the characters I've read in the other series. I think some of the characters from the other series are going to come into this world more in the next 2, so I'm hoping that that happens and that'll kind of bring me back into it a little bit more. But yeah, it's enjoyable. It's still a very good read. It's just not up to the level that all the other Robin Hobb books have been for me. I really just kind of want to get through this series now so that I can get to the last Fitz trilogy, because I love Fitz so much and I just want to see how he's doing, even though I'm terrified because it's not going to end well for him, is it? But I just want to check in on him anyway. Next up, I read With This Kiss by Carrie Hope Fletcher. This one also got 4 stars. It was a lower end 4-star, more like a 3.5. I liked the concept of this, but there were some things in the execution that I didn't love. This is about a girl who, when she kisses someone, she can see how they die. It reminds me a little bit of the Nicola Yoon book that came out last year, Instructions for Dancing. On that one, when she sees someone kissing, she can see how the relationship ends. On this one, it's when she actually kisses someone, she can see how they die, which has obviously kind of put her off being in a relationship with anyone. She's not really kissed many people throughout her life, because she's a bit traumatized by seeing death, which understandable. And then in this book she meets a guy that she wants to start a relationship with, and it's about kind of the thing of, if you know the ending, would you still go through it to sort of to experience like joy and happiness along the way, even if you know it's going to end not in a particularly happy way. And like I said, the concept of it I found really intriguing. But my issue was just with some of the execution. I feel like it just could have been delved into a little bit more. It's a fairly short book, and yeah, I just think that there's a lot more that could have been done with that concept. And also there were a few sort of just like clunky moments in here. Like there's one bit that I can't really explain because it'll spoil the story, but it was just like, well, that's not how like international travel works. It was a bit strange. But then the bit that like actually did pull me out of the story and is quite early on, which didn't help because it kind of put a bit of a sour note on throughout the rest of it. So basically, I'm not going to like give you a complete run through of the scene, but essentially there is a moment involving a trans character where the main character it is within like a book club setting, and there's a couple that is kind of there and not really paying attention and is just sort of being annoying in the background. And there's something that gets said that could potentially be offensive to this trans character. So the main character sort of apologizes, and the annoying couple in the background doesn't understand what the issue was. So then the main character sort of takes it upon herself to make it a teaching moment. Doesn't actually kind of let the trans character speak themselves at all. Just kind of gives this sort of long speech about sort of allyship, and it feels really awkward. It's like put in there at a really strange moment, and there's not really much reason for it to be there. And then it kind of moves on from that, and this trans character is not mentioned throughout any of the rest of the book. So it felt like they were put in there just to let the main character have this teaching moment when they can kind of show that they are an ally to the LGBTQ plus community. It felt very strange. And also straight after that scene, there is a Harry Potter reference. Like while the trans character is in the room as well. And that also seems a little bit of a choice to me, but yeah. Other than that, the book was fine, but that was a weird scene to happen very early on. And I've seen other reviews for it and everyone else kind of called out that moment as well. It's not just me who was like, why did this scene exist? Anyway, next up I read a short story which was an ebook, so again I do not have it. I'll put a picture here. It was Galatea by Madeline Miller. So I read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller back in April. I'm reading Circe this month. I'm literally starting it today as I film this. And I decided to read Galatea because I was reading it for Becca's 48-hour bookopoly-thon that happened in May. And I'm very happy that I did read it because I gave this one 5 stars. I really enjoyed Madeline Miller's writing style, and this one was different than Song of Achilles. There is an author's note at the back actually that explains that it is a different kind of take on a Greek myth retelling. She wanted to do something different, and it tackled a different subject as well. And to say how short this book was, I found it very, very impactful. Basically, it is about the story of Pygmalion, which is what My Fair Lady is based on eventually, but it's about the original myth. And like I said, it was just a very like impactful read for how short it was. There's nothing bad I can say about this book. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it. Okay, next up we have another 5-star read, and that was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. I really, really enjoyed this one. It is about a character called Delilah Green who basically moved away from her hometown as soon as she could when she turned 18. Her father had passed away, so she grew up with her stepmom and her stepsister and didn't particularly get on with them that much. And then she is invited back to town for her stepsister's wedding. She's taking photographs for it, and when she gets there she ends up running into her stepsister's best friend called Claire, who she never really got on with when they were younger, when they were at school together. But then things happen and a romance ends up ensuing. And yeah, I just really loved this book. I loved the romance between the 2 main characters. I also really liked the sort of family dynamics between Delilah and her sister. It was a really interesting dynamic to see, and sometimes in romances like you only really see the romance, and I felt like this one was nicely like rounded out throughout the rest of it. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. There's not much else to say. Glad I read it. There is going to be more in this series as well because there are 2 other female characters and we're going to see their storylines. So the next book is actually about the sister, and then there is another friend as well, and I think the 3rd book is going to be about her. So I'm excited to read more in this series. Then we've got one that I really wanted to give 5 stars and unfortunately it wasn't quite. It was An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X. Arpan. So Emily X. Arpan's first book, The Astonishing Colour of After, is an all-time favourite, and I've been waiting for her to put out a new book, and I really hoped that I would love this one as much as the first one, and unfortunately I didn't. It's been advertised as a Romeo and Juliet retelling. It does mention on the back that it also does have Chinese mythology as well. The Chinese mythology is actually more what it's based on, I would say. I wouldn't really look at it necessarily as a Romeo and Juliet retelling. And when it went more into the Chinese mythology side of it, because Emily X. Arpan does tend to write those sort of like contemporary books with a hint of magic in them, and when it went into that magical part I loved it. The rest of it, the setup, I was just a little bit bored. So like the end of this book amazing. The beginning just dragged a little bit, hence why it's a 4-star rather than a 5. Next one I have is another one I don't have tanned because I got it from the library. It is A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. This is actually the graphic novel version, though I have read the book many years ago when it first came out, and I saw the graphic novel in the library, so I picked it up. About a boy whose brother is shot and he decides that he's going to go and get revenge. Basically, there is this code that he lives by where someone hurts one of your loved ones, then you have to go and hurt them. So he's going to go and take revenge, and he goes and he gets in a lift at the top of his apartment building, and on the way down the lift, every floor a different person gets into the lift, and it's all kind of people from his past that have something to do with gun violence, and it's sort of about him deciding whether or not he should sort of carry this on and go and seek revenge on the person that murdered his brother. And it's a very impactful book. I gave the original book 5 stars. I gave this 5 stars as well. The art style was amazing, and yeah, it took me like a couple of hours to read, and it'll stay with me for quite a while, so I'm glad I read that one. And then on to another 5-star, we've got Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane. This is a romance about a character called Charlie who goes on a TV dating show. It's kind of like The Bachelor, and at the end of it is supposed to propose to one of the female contestants, but instead he ends up starting a romance with the male producer instead. And I just really enjoyed this book. It is sort of marketed as for fans of Red, White and Royal Blue, and I can see why. I didn't love it quite as much as that one, but I did really enjoy it. I really loved the relationship between these two main characters. There's also a lot of talk of mental health in here as well, which I really appreciated. And yeah, I'm excited to read this author's next book because it's sapphic and it's set at Christmas and it comes out this year, and that's going to be something I need to read over Christmas this year, obviously. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 5 stars. And then the last book that I read in the month of May was A Violent Ends by Chloe Gong. I finished a series, Who Am I? This is the conclusion of the duology that started with These Violent Delights. I enjoyed this book. Obviously, I can't talk too much about specifics because it is a second book in the series, but it's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in 1920s Shanghai, and there is also a fantasy element to it because there is this monster that is terrorising the city in the first one. And basically, I gave this one 4 stars. The Romeo and Juliet side of it, the romance, perfect. I loved it. The way the romance is done in this is fantastic. The bit with the monster and the madness that kind of takes over the city, could have done without. It felt like it was wrapped up a lot in the first one, and then in this one it kind of took a while for any of that to get going, and I didn't really care about it too much. I just wanted to see Romeo and Juliet. I was intrigued to see where the ending would go with this one because I wanted to know if or not Chloe Gong would go like all out Romeo and Juliet and just kill them both off at the end. I am not going to tell you whether or not she did that, but I have thoughts on the ending. I liked it, but I also didn't like it. But like I said, I can't say anything without saying spoilers. I spoke to Meg from 12 Books a Day about this last night because she's also read it recently, and yeah, we have very similar thoughts on what the ending was. Yeah, I enjoyed it as a whole. I gave it 4 stars. I will be reading the next book because there is, although it's the final one in duology, there is going to be another series that's set in the same world. I will be reading that, although I don't love the character that it's based on, but hopefully the other characters will be in it and it'll be fine. But yeah, I will be picking it up. I'm glad that I picked this one up. So right, that is all the books that I read during the month of May. It was a slightly strange one, but what I'm most happy about is that I definitely read a lot this month, and I'm hoping that carries on to next month. So that is everything. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff down below. Let me know what your favourite book that you read during the month of May was, and I will see you guys next time with a new video. Bye.